China's COVID-19 cover-up, meanwhile, reports suggest that the death toll in the hardest-hit Chinese city of Wuhan may be much higher than Beijing's count and what Beijing is saying. Joining me right now is former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Steve, it's great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Maria.
And I saw you on Sunday Morning Futures. You pointed out that the World Health Organization put out a tweet on January 14th saying that there's no human-to-human transmission of this disease. That's why President Trump is taking aim at the World Health Organization, saying that we're not going to give them the money, perhaps, that we normally do. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. It's even worse than that. The Free Republic of China in Taiwan notified the World Health Organization on January 31st of 2019 they could prove human-to-human transmission on mainland China. And the World Health Organization looked the other way and believed the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump's 100% right to go after the World Health Organization. That's really been a front organization for the Chinese Communist Party in this entire endeavor. However, that's got to be dealt with. But the Chinese Communist Party and their culpability in this is really what has to be addressed.
Yeah, how will that be addressed? I mean, Steve, you and I talked on Sunday about the fact that they cornered the market for protective equipment in January while they were downplaying the coronavirus. They actually acquired 2.02 billion masks, 25 million pieces of protective clothing. They already make half of the capacity of all masks in the world. Why did they need to buy another 2 billion in January while they were playing down the coronavirus?
Not just playing in, they were lying to people about the human-to-human transmission. They knew they had it. They vacuumed up all the PPE, protective equipment, in Europe, the United States, and Brazil. So later on, they could use it as a strategic advantage to give back to countries to kind of bleed it out like they did with Governor Cuomo. It's unacceptable. This will be proven, and this shows you it's premeditated murder of those doctors and nurses from Italy to South Africa to the United States that died in service to their fellow citizens in their country. The blood is on the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, here's what the president said last night to Sean Hannity about the World Health Organization. I want to get your take. Watch.
Every step that they made, everything that they said was wrong, and always in favor of China. Keep it open. Don't close the borders. There were other things, too, where it came from, the extent of it, how serious it was. They never viewed it as that serious.
So, Steve, they were obviously working for China, but it really is concerning that this is a UN agency, Steve, that the U.S. funds the majority of the money given to the World Health Organization. And it's not the only UN agency that China wants to control. They tried to compete to run the intellectual property agency. What a joke. They've been stealing intellectual property for decades. And then the other day, they actually got themselves on the Agency for Human Rights. Another joke. Human rights and China? You've got 1 million Uyghurs right now locked up in camps.
Not just in Uyghurs. Look what happened to the people in Wuhan because they lied to everybody about the human-to-human transmission. Look, in Geneva, they're trying to control or do control all of these UN operations. That's where President Trump's absolutely correct to expose this and go after it and make sure that it's taken care of. However, we can't take our eye off the ball. Remember, one of the most powerful things President Trump did was stop flights from China to come into the United States in late January. At that time, the Chinese Communist Party had limited, they had locked down internally Hubei province, but you could still fly from China to everywhere in the world, including Italy and Spain. The Chinese Communist Party knew about human-to-human transmission in December. All of this could have been stopped. The city of Wuhan and the decent, hardworking Chinese citizens did not have to be destroyed. Hubei province did not have to be destroyed. Italy, Spain, South Africa, the United States. All of this is at the doorsteps of the Chinese Communist Party. They are the Chinese people are the biggest victims. This is a murderous group of gangsters, and they've got to be held accountable by the world.
Which is why I believe this upcoming election in November will be largely about China, as well as the president's leadership for the coronavirus. But people want to know that you've got somebody in charge who's going to keep China accountable. We've been talking about this now for years. Devin Nunes doing an investigation into China over the last 3 years that I've been focused on Sunday Morning Futures, where China has been putting military bases across the world. They've been stealing intellectual property. They've been tracking their citizens. They've, and they're trying to track the world. Look, that's very important, and I think we both know who has been spot on this, and that is Peter Navarro in the White House. I want to get your take on this memo, two memos that Peter sent. Look, I agree that Peter Navarro has been spot on. I have him on all my shows all the time as a result of that, but it's a competing vision within the White House, isn't it, Steve?
Well, no, I think President Trump, look, let's go back there. Peter Navarro and really Pottinger, it was the China hands that knew about the scale of this. This is why you asked the question in Davos. You started following this in Davos in mid-January, as we did. People that know China understood the scale of this, and Peter Navarro's memo. But the key thing of that is the actions President Trump took. Remember, he stopped travel in from China when China wasn't stopping it for the world. He also quarantined people. That's what people forget. First time, I think, in 50 or 60 years, he stood up this task force in the White House. He also changed the requirements in nursing homes, knowing that that was going to be an affected area. And the last thing he did was to tell CDC, hey, you've got the testing, stand it up and let's get the mass testing. The China hands in the White House, Pottinger and Navarro, had this right. If you read those memos, they're prophetic about what was going to happen. Now, the president didn't see them, but his natural instincts were to take charge and to get on top of this thing right away. And you're absolutely 100% correct. The November election, look, I say every day is November 3rd now, but you can see that this confrontation, this economic and information war confrontation with China is coming. And the American people, the people throughout the world, and the Chinese people want to hold accountable the Chinese Communist Party. What did they know? When did they know it? And what actions did they take in December, mid-December of 2019? Yeah. If they had done what a legitimate government would have done, which is get on top of this and not let it become their biological Chernobyl, all of the suffering, all of the economic destruction, all the destruction of pension funds, all the unemployment, all the death would have been avoided.
Yeah, well, the other thing that Peter Navarro has been working on is getting the supply chain back to America. And this is another major issue, as you know, Steve. We're getting the majority of our active ingredients for our prescription drugs from China, only to hear them threaten us 2 months ago to say, hey, if you keep playing around with tariffs, then maybe we won't send those prescription drug active ingredients to the United States just when we need them in the middle of a crisis. Navarro has been trying to get companies to get those supply chains back to America. So the question becomes, what the heck is going on with Congress? I recognize this is 3 administrations, Steve, but how long has Nancy Pelosi been in charge? How long has Mitch McConnell been in charge? How come we have so many important critical items that are produced in China, and here we are in a pandemic, and we need those products? What the heck? We're just waking up to this now?
Well, listen, people that have followed the China situation for years, and including, President Trump, have seen this as a huge problem. We need actions today. You need all the APIs need to be brought back here. The generic drugs need to be brought back here. Remember, the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. are still fighting Peter Navarro, the Made in America first situation, Buy American. They're fighting it every day. So don't think the lobbyists here are clean. They are all over, still trying to refuse to bring the medical supplies back here, to bring the active pharmaceutical ingredients back here. This is going to be a huge fight. They're not going to give up. Remember, the Wall Street and City of London that finance the Chinese Communist Party and buy into the business model are not going to roll over in this. This is why in November, this is going to be a huge fight. The American people are going to have to decide, do we want a nation that is self-sustaining, or do we want to be a supplicant and a tributary state to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, the skeptics of the president continue to politicize this. Nancy Pelosi is about to launch another investigation into President Trump to zero in on how he has handled the coronavirus. She's still launching investigations, Steve, and she's missing over and over. I mean, she missed San Francisco. That's her hometown. The homelessness is disgusting there. That's one thing. That's a different conversation for another day. But she certainly missed China while they were looking for ghosts around the Russia collusion narrative. They should have been focused on the real threat.
Listen, Look, she's had a long track record of supporting Tiananmen Square and the freedom fighters there. We need to bring the country together on this. We don't need to tear it apart. It's pretty straightforward what happened. It's pretty straightforward that the Chinese Communist Party terrorized their own citizens, and now they're a threat, as this pandemic showed, to all mankind. The Chinese Communist Party, we have to bring the nation together to address this. We have to hold the Chinese Communist Party and their leaders have to be held accountable for what happened in December of 2019 in Wuhan. They have to be held accountable. The whole country has to come together. We don't need investigations. We don't need another witch hunt. We don't need another impeachment investigation. We need to bring the nation together to focus on what the problem is. The problem emanates from Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, what they've done to their own people, and therefore what they did to the entire world. This has got to be very simple. We got to broom out all the noise and focus on the signal. The signal's the Chinese Communist Party.
Real quick, Steve, how do you reopen the economy?
You do it in a managed way. We're not going to have a vaccine for a while. I think what has to happen is that Dr. Fauci and Birx have to put out their own model of where we're going on this for the end of April, and we're going to have a managed process. You know, all kind of therapeutic drugs, the antibody testing, mass testing overall. Let's focus on what the metrics are for the end of April, and then open this up in a managed, sophisticated way. The British call it a close-run thing. That's what we need to do. It's doable, but we've got to get focused on the metrics now.
Steve, it's great to talk with you this morning. Thank you, sir.